Oh, that is too funny.
Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Education Discussion Round. Today we're celebrating our episode 200. Been doing this for 7 years now, and today we're celebrating with Steven.
That is crazy. 200 episodes. How did these all just happen to land? I did a 100th episode with Gladys yesterday, 200th episode today with you guys. How does it land so close to the Alpha 2? That was suspicious.
So we did we had swapped around for a little bit. You used to do like for a little bit. We were doing like once a month. Then we were doing like once every other week. And then I'd said about 2 years ago that I wanted to do one every week. And so we've been on an every week schedule for a while now. And it just so happened to land on 200 episodes this week.
That is awesome. That is so cool. You guys have, I can't believe you guys have been doing it this long. You guys always have great conversation, healthy conversations, and I'm excited to join you guys today to have some of that conversation with you.
We are looking forward to it. Love to have you here, Steven. So today I'm also joined by DA and Stackerson, and we're not 100% trying to do a Q&A. We're obviously going to ask questions, but today is we're trying to have more of a discussion with Steven. We're going over topics. And Steven, you said something in the pre-show. I don't know if you still want to stand by that about NDA information.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you guys are all a part of Phoenix Initiative on this call, and I know that you're also in the pre-alpha 2 testing group. So, I just want to say, if you want to chat about anything as part of that testing, I absolve you of your NDA. You may speak about it, so we can chat about those things here.
I'm unleashed, gentlemen.
Verbal NDA, to be clear. Verbal
NDA. We're not like testing might be going on right now, and we might
immediately start streaming the game.
I have it up right now.
Me too.
But all right, so getting into it, I guess. So I want to start off with artisan classes. Let's chat about artisan classes. I've been thinking about this for a long time now, and crafting progression might not feel relevant until end game, partly due to mob drops and mob dropping completed items. The way that along with the fact that crafting just doesn't really come online until later in the game. Can I ask what you see is like the crafting and gear progression kind of stuff? If you understand what I just said, because I was rambling.
That's okay. No. I think the question is right, like crafting progression and crafting relevancy throughout the leveling process. Is it something that just becomes relevant at end game, or is there an intent that throughout your level progression, crafting is a viable means of competitive gearing? And the intent is obviously that crafting is complementary to your leveling experience, right? That at every stage that you gain access to new tiers of available gear, crafting is, should you choose to engage with that part of the game, is a viable method not only to equip yourself, but to also earn gold by trading with other players for you to perhaps acquire things that you yourself are not capable of obtaining just by yourself.
So,
yeah.
You can go, so just like in the alpha so far, the stations, you can't get the first level of station until no level 3 when you can elect a mayor and stuff like that. That's subject to like how fast you guys want the node to progress and stuff and stuff. But then you have the artisan shit, like actually leveling up the different artisan classes. There's a lot of interplay there. There's a lot of interplay between the crafting stations as well, and I love that part of the crafting. Yeah, crafting just doesn't seem to come online until much later, and it because of the mob drops, it just seems like you're more rewarded for focusing on leveling rather than and
that's perhaps some tuning that needs to happen, right? I mean, obviously, especially during phase 1 and right now prior to phase 1, A lot of the econ work is still being tuned. Actually, just last weekend, we got a lot of our BI metrics online for the economy team, and they're making some wide arcing balance changes that you probably have seen in our latest patch notes last weekend and this weekend. As they collect those metrics and see what players are doing and where they're engaging with certain artisanship systems, you're going to see some refinement and fine tuning of the artisanship to achieve the artisanship systems to achieve that intent that we have, which is that it is complementary throughout the leveling process.
Yeah. And like I said, I really enjoy the interplay that goes on there. It's just the different station, like having to get the different stations online, having to become mayor of the node, having to get level 3 node, having to become mayor of a node, having to get those buildings made, and then processing's a giant bottleneck for that thing. And then for a test there, you guys had it where drops period were very like limiting, and but like it's changed, getting gold a little bit more forgiving now. It feels more rewarding. Like that was a small change there, where like 1 week it was grind hell, and then the other week it was, oh, I'm grinding and I'm feeling a lot more rewarding for doing things.
Yeah, so to give you some insight there was a bug in how we treat the drop tables based off of level disparity with you and the target mob. So, obviously if you go and you kill mobs that are 9 or 10 levels beneath you, we don't want to have you have the same chances of the drops that you would if the mob were closer to your level. And there was a bug with how far we were deprecating those percentage chances, which made it really feel like you weren't getting a lot of drops a couple of weeks ago. But as you said, as you saw in the last week, we adjusted one, that bug, but two, some of the drop tables. So you can expect that, like when you think about whole item drops right now off of mobs, it's anywhere from like 2 to 4% chance on an individual mob kill that it might drop a completed item. But the majority of those cases are going to be basic white, low quality items that get dropped essentially. And you don't have control over some of the stats that relate to that item. Whereas what crafting provides, and to be clear, like, yes, when artisanship really comes online, it is at the nodes, it is at stage 3. However, there are some initial stations that you can interact with both in Lionhold as a starting area to introduce you to artisanship from a gathering perspective, and there are some outposts outside of Lionhold that you can be sent to interact with as well. So there's some onboarding, some FTUI systems, but generally, yes, you're right. It comes online really at stage 3 of a node. Now, how long does it take to get to stage 3 of a node? That's something that is still being fine-tuned as well. But generally, you can expect that within a day or two of the server opening, there's going to be a stage 3 node somewhere. And then from there, it's going to be through the process of the election of the mayor, of the selection of the building types that you can construct, that people get to advance in certain directions. And that's important because the specialization makes nodes relevant to certain groups and irrelevant to other groups. And that specialization is how you determine traffic to the node. So I think it's important to do, but to the crux of your question, how do we want artisanship to interface with players? We want it to be complementary to the progression of their character, right? So it is a valid choice that they can make early on and start to excel in through gathering and processing these things and acquiring recipes, and then either equipping themselves or selling it to other players.
And I love that vision. I want that to be the case. I'm not saying you guys can't do it. Personally, I can't see it right now just from like experience with other games of having mobs drop. And I think it's been a point of conversation within the community as well ever since the Firebrand stuff and for a while before that. But like mobs dropping gear, you're just leveling and you're using that gear, and it takes away from the importance of crafting, and so it makes it to where crafting doesn't feel like it becomes relevant until in game, because you're also spending gold on that. It takes time and stuff like that. So I do love. I do want to see that vision come online.
Yeah, go ahead.
You go, Dan.
I was just going to say, from the perspective of somebody who's not necessarily as much into crafting as others, I will say it does feel good to get those completed drops. One of the things that you could possibly do to make that more involved throughout that process is just having so you guys introduced like set bonuses and sets for a lot of different monsters. That's one of the things that we noticed with the PTR, and we were ecstatic. We were like, oh my god, like we have these full set bonuses and things like that. So I think just if you to incorporate that, maybe have more of those materials drop regularly so that people can go run back to the node, craft a piece for that set and come back. That's one of the ways that you could possibly do it. But like as a non-crafter, I would say the current system does feel really good as far as rewarding you throughout that leveling process and still being able to keep up with the carrot on the stick, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, what you described about like material components dropping, that's all a part of our original intent with how crafting interfaces with adventuring, obviously, right? Balancing that is something that's going to be tuned as part of phase one. It's a very important, aspect of testing and reacting, especially for the economy team. So, you always want to keep a balance between the adventurers who don't interface with the crafting section, that they have something to continue to progress from, whether that be from quests that provide certain pieces of gear, through mobs that drop certain pieces of gear, or if they acquire it through trade. Not everybody within the player population is an artisan who cares about crafting things. So there has to be multiple faucets, so to speak, for this gear to be introduced into the economy. Now, when you do introduce that gear, the sinks on the flip side of that coin is that as that gear becomes irrelevant and it's still an open economy, you have deconstruction that provides integral components for additional crafting as well. And that loop isn't fully completed yet. It should be within the next couple of weeks or so. But all of that contributes to the ecosystem that is artisanship.
Just real quick from chat, Jargeki Gra ask Yokai Theater, can you ask Steven when the EU servers will pop up?
I believe the EU servers are intending to pop up on the 25th. So on the 25th, we'll be launching an EU server. We might see a test of that probably next weekend for our pre-A2 testers. But by the 25th, we will have our EU server up.
Okay. Stackerson, do you have anything you wanted to say about the crafting, or
No, I think you guys covered it.
Okay. Next up, from Princess Kenny, Princess Kenny brings up a great point. With enemy of the state system no longer being an ashes creation, how can mayors protect their nodes from potential rivals using infrastructure like siege crafting stations, smitheries, and armories to prepare for attacks? It feel pretty frustrating to work to build up a node's resources only to have enemy nodes leverage them against us. Are there any mechanics in place that could help mayors significantly safeguard their node infrastructure from these kinds of threats?
Well, nodes aren't meant to gatekeep other players who are not citizens of your node from interfacing with your node. Like traffic to your node, fees that are associated with utilizing the node services that get applied to non-citizens are directly contributing and helping your node advance by filling your coffers. So it is not the intent of the node system to gatekeep other citizens from being able to interface. It's quite the opposite of that. However, with that being said, there are some systems that are in place that can still provide a quote unquote enemy of the state type of feel. That is the war systems that we've discussed, right? During a war state between nodes, those citizens become flagged for combat with each other. And guards will actively defend against the adversarial node member list. So there are mechanisms by which you can have acute periods of hostile interaction, of friction.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I
You can
think
go ahead, dude.
a little bit more of the concern is like, these guys are preparing for war. They've been destabilizing your zone health. They've been doing all these things to grief your node from a specific other node that's targeting. And I would say sometimes as a player, it doesn't feel good that those players can essentially just walk into the node, freely use the the artisan systems that we've built up to craft materials needed to go to war against us.
I'm sure it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're like, hey, what are you doing here? Get out of here. But that doesn't mean that you get to block them off from the content that your node is providing. There are mechanisms by which you can create friction with those groups of people, whether that be through orchestrated guild wars that get declared and you can try to deny, zone access to those individuals through the guild war, through the node war system that you can utilize, through PKing or flagging those on those individuals. Like that is, something obviously you can do, but we don't want to hard lock or hard cap out those people from utilizing the node services, especially if they're going to pay a premium that is non-citizen fees to do so.
Okay.
Example of like this is like currently in the alpha, there are two different kinds of like examples of this. One, becoming a citizen, you can just make an alt and go to a node and become a citizen and kind of like cheese the election process. Currently, I'm sure that's not intended. I'm sure that's going to be changed, but currently you can just make a whole bunch of alts and go in and vote for have your guildies vote for whoever you want, and a single guild could potentially go ahead.
Some of those systems are still coming online, right? So what can currently be done is not something that we intend to have be the core loop. And citizenship is obviously something that is going to be fine-tuned over the course of Alpha 2. But sorry, I think I interrupted the rest of that question. Go ahead.
But like there's also another point where like one group will be out leveling, or like one group will put a whole bunch of time, like not even like a single guild, like a whole bunch of people will put in a lot of time and effort into building up a node, and then others will come in and either just PvP be PvP on stations. And I know you said like the guards. Right now, the guards aren't exactly the most biggest threat in the game. Like, we've had people that have had corruption, and they will straight up Benny Hill skit, just run them through nodes, like just chasing them. Absolutely. It's very funny to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the guards are getting an overhaul. For a while there, they weren't even reacting to corrupted players. So the guard system had some bugs in it. The corruption system is getting fine-tuned on Monday. To include the more debilitating stat dampening effects as well, which was missing. I mean, obviously, part of Alpha 2, part of any alpha, is going to be that people are less disincentivized or less deterred from doing bad things because it's a temporary alpha, right? It is not something that's going to persist. So we're probably going to need to overtune the corruption system a little bit during the alpha in order to make it more debilitating, so that that type of gameplay is more reflective of how people would be apprehensive to gain corruption when the game goes live.
Yeah, on the current iteration of the corruption, I know a lot of you guys who are viewing this have had thoughts about it, but corruption right now feels really
it's
good.
Very punishing. If you're worried that it's going to be, go ahead.
It's punishing, and one of our guys went red, and we ended up just hunting him down and killing him because he was just easy target. And he's like, I dropped 3 pieces of my gear, and we were like, yoink! Oh man, that's a really nice shield you got there. That's a really nice. So honestly, we're excited to see just the extent of how red people are going to go, and like what kind of loot what we get out of the loot pinata for popping that open. So I think you guys have done a really good job with the corruption system, and I think it's already starting off in a really great place.
It's also like it's a very big thing to kind of work off corruption. Like even with level 1 corruption, it'll take you take you a good little bit to work it off. But yeah, corruption's in it. It might be like there's a lot of things in the test right now that I think people will be very knee-jerk reaction to, and I think that's valid. I think that's valid feedback for that. But I also think that people need to also play. I have a more long-term experience with it to kind of get in the feel. I've also been in this kind of situation where like I was like I don't like how this functions. I don't like how this works. I'm not super. I'm like there's like I've had criticism about certain things, but then as I played more and more, I've grown lighter on them. And also, there's a gigantic. You guys are doing a lot of work as well. There's a gigantic night and day between each version. Like the version, like the live version right now and the PTR version. It's night and day.
Yes.
The PTR is so much better, like smoother, great feeling versus like the live version that's going on.
Yeah, and I think those types of wide sweeping incremental kind of changes between version to version is something you're going to see really happen a lot, especially in phase 1. And that is because, the data that we're collecting with our testing group, now having invited all of the Alpha 1 testers to be part of Pre2 Testing, they're providing us, obviously scaling that we need to see from a concurrent user standpoint, that we're able to then fine tune and our network stack around, our replication graphs around, we're finding memory stumps, we're finding memory leaks, we're finding issues that at scale become much easier to find, and even with real players more so than what we find with our bot testing and or with our QA testing, right? Because QA works in conjunction with our bot testing as well. So it has been very instrumental to have you guys as testers, all of the A1 testers participating, especially so religiously over these past 2 months. Because we're getting a lot of headway. The team is testing and reacting every day to it.
I think that, and I guess I'll ask this from Twitch chat. Gunnel Twitch at Yokai Theater asked Steven about the nameplate distance, especially in action combat. It needs to be times 3 the distance it currently is. This is
I think the nameplate distance is currently set to around 75 meters or 100 meters or so. I know that there is some nameplate work that's still outstanding that we won't get to until probably phase 2, and that has to do with how we're rendering the nameplate on the screen space. Right now, you can kind of even see nameplates in between objects that you would normally expect to block line of sight towards nameplates, or in between different actors. That work still has to be done by the graphical engineering side of it. But when we're talking about like targeting systems with the nameplate, I know that UI engineering has been working on over the past week or so some updates to the nameplates. So you could probably expect some targeting updates to come over the course of the next couple of tests.
Oh, okay. So okay. I don't know. Gunnar, you let me know if that was satisfactory to your answer in chat. I think that the death penalty will be a big straining point for a lot of the more casual audience. In I think people will come in. Wolves are a nightmare, right? Wolves in the game right now, I think, will be
love them.
We love them, but like wolves for a newer player, they will get on you, kill you, and you will. I think a lot of players will start accruing a large amount of EXP debt and feel which EXP debt right now, if you're farming like equal level stuff to you, is not hard to work on. It's not. Just don't die over and over and over again. But like, it's not a super punishing thing to me. In my eyes, I love the idea of the EXP debt. I know it's a point of contention in the community. Like, some people are for it, some people are against it, but I'm all for it. Like, I'm loving how how the death penalty systems are working right now.
I mean, I think that when we talk about EXP debt, What we're really talking about is failure, essentially, right? Like if you're dying, you're dying either to NPCs or to players, right? There's been some failure that's had, and an individual death isn't going to be debilitating. But as you said, if you continually are running back and you're dying in the same fashion, or you're dying repeatedly over and over again in different ways, like you need to stop, collect, rethink, change your approach. And the EXP debt is going to be something that is going to remind you to do that because it can become debilitating. And again, like that goes back to one of our core tenets as a game, as a philosophy, right? Risk versus reward. In order for risk to feel like true risk, there must be a bite to it. And EXP debt is part of that bite.
Yeah. Stackerson, DA, you got anything else to say about that?
I like the EXP debt. I think one of the reasons why for you, Yokai, it doesn't feel as
No, I like it. I'm saying that I think
okay.
more casual audiences will like die to wolves and fucking.
Okay. Yeah.
I like EXP debt. I think I just said yeah.
I think players just have to be educated that doing a little bit of some monster grind to work off that debt is just going to be part of your experience. You're going to experience death within the game, and you're going to have to work that off. It's I think that was something a little bit more akin to older MMOs where you have these like, hey, I'm not doing anything. My processing is queued up. Let's go grind some mobs to work off some debt. And I've done that in the past, and I think it's a good way to just keep people in the open world doing different things. And yeah, I like what the EXP debt is and how it allows you to essentially put a hard reset on fights, especially when you're one of the problems that we've seen in other games is like the tent problem, for example, in New World, where you respawn, you get up, you just send it, and you keep sending it and sending it, and as long as you have materials on to repair that gear, there's no end to it. There's no
Right.
you've won the battle. So I really like the part that EXP debt kind of plays into that.
Yeah, and I mean, just to be clear, to capitalize on what you just commented there, DA, like at some point, the risk will become so debilitating that there will be a definitive victor, right? Like an engagement that you just described, where you're face rolling and you're constantly respawning and running back, and as long as you have the resources, which in a majority of game, those resources are somewhat trivial in order to acquire, so it can be somewhat infinite. There really is no decisive, hey, I've wiped the floor with your group so many times now that you cannot even oppose us anymore, right? And so I will win this engagement. You will go recoup, pay the debt you need to, and we'll face each other again at a later engagement. Like that is what a system like XP debt, like the respawn debuff provides.
Chat's wanting me to bring up TTK. Most of the chat seems to be wanting TTK right now. So your damage
Currently
ramps.
TTK.
What?
Yeah.
Your damage ramps up a lot with like good gear and stuff like that. Your health does not currently. You're like the TTK in the game. I don't know what you want to say, DA. What you want to say?
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, I think that that's a great point. Is the health, what you mentioned on is the health. The damage feels fine. I think it's just a health scaling issue because the damage scales so fast past the health that I get to a point where one of my abilities, as long as you're not like a healer or somebody with a high sustain tank like a tank, I can pretty much get a quarter of your health off with one hit. So
yeah, I think the important thing to keep in mind, and make sure that people are aware of is like the data, the sentiment that we collect on TTK or any other tunable stat. Because, what it takes to change what you're describing is as simple as a 5-minute change list, right, to submit to the game. That's either how con scales towards HP, how damage mitigation scales, how, damage values scale across ability usage. All of those things are made so that they're extremely tunable. And we, over the course of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, we're going to be making a lot of balance changes. At first, it'll start broad stroke. And then once those broad strokes start to dial in where we want to be, and that where we want to be is going to be partly informed by player feedback who's participating, then we will start getting more precise and specific in the strokes that we make. So this is very, very tunable stuff. That is the whole purpose of alpha.
Yeah. Stackerson, you haven't had a chance to talk at all.
I've been just answering questions in chat, so I don't even know what the question is.
Okay, it's currently about TTK. DA, do you have any other thing you want to address on the TTK?
I mean, I'd want it longer, but yeah. I guess I wasn't sure what has all been said about it, so I don't have anything. I'll just give my opinion.
DA, what'd you say?
I was just gonna say we're all fans of higher TTK around here. Allows you to kind of it just feels very frustrating when you play those MMOs where it's like, hey, if I didn't get the jump on him first, or if I didn't immediately know that this guy was incoming, he gets the jump on me, I get CC locked, and then I'm blown up. But yeah, combat feels good for those of you who are asking about it. We got to test. We had a couple skirmishes against a little bit larger groups, and I mean, it's so much fun.
If you're melee, the action combat feels really fucking good, except for like when you're trying to interpret. Like there's still plenty of work that like definitely feels like it needs to be done on the action camera side. The action camera feels really good. Some of the classes can't interact with the action camera as much because they have to do healing and or like range classes feel like they interact with that a little bit less. But if you're melee, action camera feels really well. But if you're in action camera, the UI there's a lot of work to be done with how you interact with UI because you're having to swap in and out of action camera constantly to like do UI elements. But so another thing that people want, this is the next question I had on my list anyway. Some people wanting to talk about the respawns and stuff like that. With the current distance we've seen from respawn points, I'm a bit concerned about the potential of zombie rushing content, quote unquote zombie rushing content.
Sure.
That's it's your game. How do you see respawn locations working? Do you see it affecting gameplay?
So there was an attunement system that was submitted this last week into our QA branch that's being tested. And our testers should be seeing that roll out this next week. And that attunement system basically will prohibit you from spawning at shrines that you have not entered within certain proximity of. So that's always been our long-term intended goals. The system just hadn't been implemented yet. Players will be able to attune to one particular shrine, and they will be prohibited from respawning at shrines that they haven't entered proximity of.
This has been very varied testing through the thing. You'll die in one location and you'll respawn at Steel Blue. You'll respawn like halfway across the map, or all the way back at the beginning part. Or Steel Bloom Citadel is apparently the map's favorite place to fucking just plop you.
It loves taking us to Steel Bloom.
It loves taking us to Steel Bloom. But like
some of that does have to do, World Team, with the placement and location and prevalence of the respawn points. There was some design discussion about whether or not additional respawn points should be spawned based off of node progression. That's an idea that we're toying with as well. But in part, what you just described is like, what is the number of respawn locations that a particular zone or a particular biome should contain? And the less it has, obviously the more opportunity there is for you to spawn at further away distances from your locations. Now, part of that has to do with the philosophy of, again, risk versus reward. Like, are you paying a price for dying that you now have to make your way back to your party? Travel is a real thing. With mounts coming online recently, after having been addressed some of the bugs with mounting and dismounting, that can mitigate obviously some of the time it takes to travel back to a location. But I will say that the shrine locations, the attunement process, and the respawn proximities are things that all are being tuned as part of this week's update.
There have been plenty of also respawn location. I guess I want to try to address this other one real quick. In the newest patch, in the PTR version, you're tuning to normal shrines, but you can also choose a home shrine. and to respawn at, I feel like that goes against your philosophy of no fast travel. People can that's very gamifiable with like, especially with like,
for sure, 100% it is. But just to be clear, like the home shrine applicability when we leave the Riverlands is that you can only choose to respawn at a home shrine if you're within the zone that the home shrine exists within. Otherwise, it's not a valid option.
okay. Is that within its ZOI? Like, the map is broken up into like different ZOIs and stuff like that. Is that within the biome that like you have to be in the Riverlands, or is that within like this, like the certain ZOI of that home?
It's more translatable to consider it within the biome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The biomes are fairly big. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm against fast travel. It's very gamifiable, especially when like you just die, you go back to the home tree, you go back to you set Marilith as your home instance. You go out, farm a bunch of stuff, and then it's just faster to die and then go back, respawn to the thing. You've lost some of the stuff, but it's faster for you that way, and you can just go off and rework off some of that EXP debt. That's currently kind of what it kind of feels like. I don't know if they want to, like, there's a tuning aspect with like how you want EXP debt to kind of function, or
yeah, we'll see in our metrics that we collect as players interact with that system. We'll see how many people are dying to respawn at their home at their home shrine, and that'll be part of the data set that we use in order to tune the system.
You were laughing at the thing someone said, "Well, I sound like XQC, weren't you?"
I think the home shrine thing was definitely a much needed feature. I think that kind of eliminating the ability to just unstuck is going to fix a lot of those problems. And as going forward with future tuning and whatnot, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue.
Just to be clear, unstuck as a feature is obviously intended for testing, right? Like that is right. As you get stuck in certain places that you shouldn't, that's a way to unbrick your character.
With the other aspect of the respawn thing, of the respawning is there are another two parts I want to talk about this, but like with the when you die, you can sometimes spawn into areas that are influenced by, like, that have mobs around them, and mobs can sometimes just like murder you as you're reviving, kind of thing. And then also in PvP as well, there are a lot of times where the fight just doesn't seem like it ends until one side is camping, so whoever initiates that, one side is camping the spawn point. And I'm sure that's not intended for like the spawn locations, but
are you talking about corruption, like people who are going corrupt spawn camping you?
No, well, that too. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think he's more referring to the fact that, like, when you're fighting that battle, and as people kind of trickle in at the rate of that they trickle, at the distance that they have to walk back to get back to the battle, a lot of times that it feels like the battle turns into we won't completely win this until we push to the spawn point and then have them at the spawn ready to go. And I think a lot of that is going to be alleviated, Yokai. Just arguably, I think a lot of that's going to alleviate itself when EXP debt is something that threatens players a lot more, especially when there's a lot more persistency on their characters and whatnot. Right. And I think the next biggest thing is just having kind of like an Arcade where those Nui statues where you couldn't attack people by them. I think that's
PvP Suppression Zone.
Yeah, I think
the suppression zone tech just came online a couple of weeks ago for the desert biome and for the tropics biome, and that also has PvP suppression available to it, which will likely be applied within a close proximity of the respawn shrines.
Okay, I guess the last part of the respawn shrine thing is that, like, say you're running a caravan, or you're doing world boss content, you're doing Carfin, and you're respawning at the nearest shrine, kind of thing. If you're, one of my concerns with that has been that if you're respawning at one of those things and you're just rushing in, it doesn't give I think people will have like that tunnel vision brain where they'll ignore their EXP debt, and then the winners won't. And when the winners of the fight won't feel like they've had a chance to like really revel in the victory. Like they won't have like a chance to like really get away with the like have a chance to like start moving the caravan and stuff like that. I don't know. The distance from the shrine has been a part where I've the distance from the shrine has been a part that I've always had like concerns about or wanted to get feedback on.
And what's the question? Sorry, what's the question specifically?
I don't think it's really a question there. It's just me making a statement.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, again, like those systems specifically with regards to like respawn shrine, the experience debt, the corruption issues, the PvP suppression, the attunement and distance, like those are all kind of intertangled. And that's part of the tuning process, right? That's part of us testing and reacting. A lot of these issues that you mentioned are issues that we obviously see that are being addressed in one way or the other as an update that people will get to interact with, and we test the tuning on.
Yeah. Someone asked in chat if dueling can you ask if we are going to get a dueling system so we can so we don't have to run to the Badlands and to not get corrupted. A dueling system, I definitely kind of agree. I could definitely see and agree with. Instead of having to like, oh, we have to go to a shrine and we just have to and also you don't have to worry about EXP debt for just like trying to like trying to test some things out. I don't know.
We've talked in the past about implementing a dueling system. That's not super high on our priority list right now, right? We don't consider that kind of a core feature, core system, but it is something that we intend to deliver on.
Yeah. I just got laughed at for asking about the dueling system question because apparently it was asked on the official live stream. To go with the respawn location thing, though, another thing from Serendipity and Oh No Step Bro, they bring up an interesting topic that I personally am split on. They would like to see other classes have access to revives, perhaps limiting to out of combat scenarios. Another thing that they also bring up is maybe making it a consumable item, similar to how other games do professions like engineering and WoW and stuff like that, to where it's a maybe part of scribing in this instance. What are your thoughts on adding consumable items or broadening access to revives to maybe out of combat stuff like that?
I think that there will very likely be a consumable item that can be crafted that will essentially be a resurrection scroll that will have either very long cast time associated with it and a high mana consumption use, and it will likely revive the player at extremely low mana and health and not return any experience debt back to the player. But if we're talking about, resurrection as an ability, that lives squarely within the cleric realm. Obviously, that gets expanded out when we talk about, the class structure and the 8 different types of clerics that there will be. But the cleric is going to reserve the ability to return experience debt to the player on resurrection. That won't be something that we delegate to an item.
Yeah, I'm very much a fan of the pick me up system, kind of like how you see it in New World or like Guild Wars 2. I very much like that. This is your last chance. You're downstate, and you better crawl away or just get dinged for damage. So, it doesn't have to be a thing in Ashes, but I'm very much a fan of that. Pick me up system because it's very easy to just knock those people off if you are the aggressor, and it also allows you to do that kind of cheeky gameplay to drag your character back behind the rock and just, hey, get me up, please.
This might be a hot take. But I'm not a big fan of the pick me up system.
I'm not a big fan of it either.
I'm not a big fan of it. I think that look, resurrection, tactical resurrection, battle resing, whatever you want to call it, it has an upside and it has a downside. The downside is that you're coming back in a very vulnerable state. You have the ability with ease to lose additional experience debt when you're in that vulnerable resurrected state. And boy, oh boy, you better be careful about utilizing it during an engagement, because not only as a cleric are you a target when you use that long cast, but as a resurrected player, you're not moving positions either. So you're resurrecting on the spot. So your allies better have taken control of the battlefield, or you're going to pierce. You're going to thread that needle delicately. So I do like that, because it's a very high anxiety moment of gameplay, and I think that's fun. But the crawl system, even when I oh my god, man, tell you what, when I played not in MMOs, but when I played like Gears of War and like downstate or something, I was not a big fan of that. I just wanted to see the head pop. Yeah.
I love your current resurrection the game, by the way. I like it. It's extremely big, noticeable. Like I agree with you. Combat res is a very like a big thing, and it's a very big thing in PvP, especially people being able to see that's going on is important. Where I can hold contention, where I hold like a split opinion on that is like if your cleric goes down and you're deep within Carfin, say, and you have to go all the way back out of Carfin just to grab your cleric, is where I could see scenarios to where like an out of combat res would be very, very helpful for not feeling like it wastes people's time.
Yeah, and that's why I said, like, I think that we will have an item that you can craft that will be available to use.
Awesome sauce. Love to hear that. Kenny asked, how do you see that the 25th is going to go, Steven? What's your opinion on the 25th?
I think that we're making a lot of good progress right now. I think that, as you guys can see as testers, right, week after week, there's, as you said, a lot of updates, a lot of changes, a lot of fixes that are going in. Sometimes when you submit fixes, you get new bugs. That's the nature of game development. And we can't always predict what bugs are going to happen as a result of that. We can't predict how long it's going to take to fix a bug. We cannot, predict what is going to break when we open the floodgates outside of the A1 testers who are currently testing right now. But what I am confident about is that this approach we've taken, I get a lot of people are concerned, hey, there, the state of the game, there's a lot of bugs in it. It feels like an alpha. Well, that's because it is an alpha. And an alpha is going to have bugs, and an alpha is going to have some stability issues, and an alpha is going to have some performance issues, especially at the start of the alpha. But what we've committed to as a company, as a project, is to show those things and to allow the players to be a part of that process. And so, my confidence is high that the team is going to continue to perform in the way that we have been over the course of the last few months, which is a highly reactive situation. And really, this is us flexing our muscle for, live ops. Which I think is the most integral component of an MMORPG, is how well the team can live ops the game. And as a company right now, we are really flexing that muscle.
In the testing forums that are going on right now, one of the big hot topics has been they shouldn't drop whether or not you guys should drop the NDA on phase 1 and stuff like that. That's even going on in chat right now as well. I'm of the opinion, like, I love how the PTR is going. I think you guys make massive changes. I think you're going to get fire either way. I think there's going to be people that like 100% like understand where you guys are coming from and like understand it's an alpha and stuff like that. I think you're going to get fire either way though. And I'm also the opinion that just pull the band-aid. I don't think keeping the NDA up is really realistic with how many testers you have going on. So pulling the band-aid off and just dropping the NDA is of my opinion the best call you guys could do. I don't know what your thoughts are on like keeping the NDA up or dropping the NDA.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about fire, you talk about people giving fire. It's really about expectations for the broader group of people who are watching Ashes of Creation or who may not be watching Ashes of Creation, but are excited to play it and expect a completed game with Alpha 2. And that's not, we have verbally hit that point home as much as we can. People talk about, well, you set expectations with the monthly development update that is, not a buggy mess, that is not, having issues. That's because we're trying to collect feedback on systems in the way that they're intended to exist. And it's going to be a really difficult showcase to collect feedback on for a system if it is having, bug-ridden issues. That would be kind of pointless for us to provide those updates. Right now, people are seeing Alpha 2 in all of its massively multiplayer glory, which introduces a whole host of issues that as a team we're going to churn through as quickly as possible, right? But we need this phase in order to accomplish that work. And so, ultimately keeping the eye on the prize being the end goal of delivering a game that's performant, stable, and fun, right? That requires us to go through this process of the unstable portion of it. Now, we could be like every other company and we could do that process under NDA. That is tried, tested, and true approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always said that the greatest thing, but also the most, and even yesterday I got asked this question by Vladis, what has been the most scary thing about this process? The most scary thing is also the most rewarding. It's that it is open, right? It's that we are showing the world, hey, this is what an alpha looks like. This is how we're testing and reacting. You get to watch us improve the game day after day, weekend after weekend, until we get to a point where the reception is positive. That's something that people should be promoting, should be saying, hey, yes, this is the right way to do it. And other projects should do it as well. We should be lifting the veil over what it takes to make these games, because in part, by having a voice as a player in that process and having that voice be open, we will get better products overall. And so I do believe in that message. And that's why I think some people look and they say, well, you're taking a risk. You're taking a risk by people who are not informed, that are going to see the bugs on day one of the alpha, not come back and take a look at the game when it's day one of the launch. And I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. I think that people will look, and there will be people who are uninformed that come and they say, oh, it's, the game's a scam, or it's not complete, or what have you been doing for the years? Like, I don't know how to express enough that there are over 200 people who are very passionate about building an MMORPG, that are building this MMORPG, and we are building it for players that we want to be proud of the work that we've done, right? And so our approach to doing that openly is something that is obviously, I believe, unique, but end result will provide a better long-term product.
I think what people love hearing is every time you're on one of these things, if you go to hearing the passion of how you talk about the game and talk about talk about how you're developing it and stuff like that, talk about the team's passion of stuff like that. I think it feeds into people's hype and excitement for the game, for the project. One of my peak moments, the thing that has been very favorite parts of the testing so far, is when the developers come and chat and we'll just chat with the community and stuff. That's been a very a big great part for me personally. We don't have you. Go ahead.
Just to be clear, it's great for you, but it's also really great for the developers. not just because they're getting live active feedback, but also because the reason people are in this industry, and this is 9 times out of 10 true for anybody I've ever met that's in this industry. If I go to GDC, if I talk with other owners of different major publishers and companies that are developers as well, is because they themselves are usually the passionate gamer that wants to play the product they're making. And the truth of the matter is that, you know, people work better with encouragement. And it is very encouraging to directly interface with your community, to directly see the feedback. What's not encouraging is when, you know, people flame, or people who don't understand or are unengaged or try to look for criticisms that are just above and beyond. The reality of it is, it's a lot of hard work to build this game. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the team members who are working on the weekends, who are working in the evenings to improve the product. They're doing it for us as players, and I do think as a consumer as well, it's our responsibility to encourage those people to continue to do good work. And part of that encouragement is providing feedback in a healthy manner.
Yeah, I think with the state of the MMO industry, there's a lot of people who want a game, and as long as the game comes out good with, most of and sticks to its core values, I think that you're going to be very, very hard pressed to turn this game away. I also echo that sentiment with Yokai. I mean, shout out to Planendorf, to Andrew, to Jacob. They have been champions. They get up early in the morning and they're like, "Are
Kobe
you guys
too.
still awake?" Yeah, Kobe too as well. They get up in the morning and they're like, "You guys are still awake?" And it's 4 a.m. and we're out there killing mobs, and they're just like, "Oh man, you guys found this bug for me, and we're working hard on it now." So it's just been a great experience for that. When it comes to negatives that you guys were discussing, outside of your kind of what's expected for an alpha,
pause you there for a second.
Go ahead.
We have 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
making sure.
Yeah.
So wrap it up. There are very few things that I just find negative, as far as like, this is really bad and the game needs to, or Intrepid needs to stop and fix this right now. It's a lot of it is just little stuff like you guys said that are akin to an alpha, but little bugs, different hiccups when it comes to memory and things like that. But that's to be expected. But overall, the experience of just being in the world, playing the game, and working through that process has been more than enjoyable. I wouldn't be sleeping 4 hours a night, sometimes 2, for the past, I don't know, week or whatever, if I wasn't enjoying myself, if I wasn't having a good time. And a lot of that kind of like unplayability just isn't there from even in its current form.
No, it's in a very, very playable. I think there's going to be a wake up call for a lot of people that are wanting this to be their dream. Like people that don't fully understand the kind of game you guys are making, and that are so that the answering the question of, hey, how does the flagging system work, when people are thinking, oh, it works like New World, has been a gigantic thing. You guys don't pay attention to what you've been following for the last 7 years, kind of like thing for me. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a gigantic wake up call for a lot of people that don't know what kind of game Ashes really is and have that dream MMO in their head. But I think that it's in a very good playable state right now, and I think that you're going to have a lot of people defend and understand like the state Ashes is currently and it is truly a alpha 2.
Yeah, I agree. The biggest thing, and my biggest gripe, and I will die on this hill, is the minimum guild size. 30. Oh, there are a ton of guilds coming.
That was the next thing, but
I mean that's about as standard a truth across MMOs that you've played for many years, I'm sure, right? That you have guild size progression. In fact, one of the ways that I, as a guild leader, have addressed that in the past with games that I played, is that generally I will identify core guild members, and then if there's not enough to support a secondary guild that long term we'll need to have anyways, then I identify people that I say, okay, your job is to go become a member of other guilds. One, to plant the seeds of espionage that I might need later, or 2, to identify the potential allies that we want you to create inroads with, right? Like, as a guild leader, there's also opportunity there that has to do with guild progression. But I don't think that's too different from what you probably experienced across other games.
No, the default.
It's not.
The default. Go ahead. Yeah, well, not even the default number. It's the but yes, the default number. The default number being like, was it 25, 50?
It's 30 currently.
30 currently. Yeah, 30 currently in the game. And there's not any kind of guild progression currently right now.
Right. Yeah, that's not in yet.
Yeah. But like that's the default, right? Like in other games, like they have guild caps, you just make a secondary guild and move on for that. Like that's an organizational thing. Some people are for it, some people are against it. Obviously, like that, it might not be a quote unquote fix for the for the cap issue. But another thing to go on top of that too is having multiple guilds too. With the systems you guys have with the guild wars and node wars type stuff, do you see that multiple guilds fighting against each other to get behind? Like I have like a kind of cooldown time, like, hey, I war against my own guild and then they lose, so we can get past this, so we can be on a cooldown timer and not have to worry about guild wars. Do you think you see that being a problem?
No, I'm very familiar with those types of gimmicks.
Yeah,
as I have utilized them myself in the past many times. So the guild system is accommodating of those thoughts, and there are protections as part of the mechanics in order to avoid that.
Are there punishments for losing both node wars and like say you declare not on the defender side, because I know we know that on the defender side there's punishments, but on the attacker side, if you are someone that attacked and lost a guild war, a node war, say like the Godspike event, node wars and guild wars, are there like penalties for being the attacker that loses?
Yeah, I mean, again, we go back to our philosophy of risk versus reward. If there's not a loss to be had for the victor or the loser, then what's the concern? What's the risk? So there has to be those things in place. As you mentioned, for the node, right? If you are losing a siege, you're literally losing your city. And for the guild wars and node wars, there are absolutely detriments that are intended as part of the system.
Yeah, I agree. I think my only concern was just like, with raids being 40-man cap, and the guild size at its base default start being 30 just seems a little low compared to most games, because other games do have that progression, right? And you can bring in more members. Lost Ark had it, Elion had it. I don't think New World did, but right now, I would say the standard is usually around that 100-man for the starters, and then you progress on from there. And so it just at a first glance that 30 is just very...
The other thing to think about, DA, is like it's 30 at level 1 right now. First of all, very tunable. But right. Second, it's 30 at level 1, but we don't know, or at least you don't know what it takes to get to level 2. It could be something as quick as an hour's worth of work, and at level 2 you might be able to expand by 15 or 20 slots. So it's like, that progression has to come online first. Right. We tune then based around the interaction that we collect metrics on from the player with that progression.
I hate to cut the conversation at a high point, and like also like we could keep continued going for hours now, I'm sure, but we've hit our hour mark with you, Steven. I know you're a very busy man. Thank you for showing up today.
I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad that everybody on this call is helping to test. I know you guys have been through the pain. But I'm also glad to get your guys' feedback, and I know you and DA, your guys' guild is very active in providing, I think, great detailed feedback, which is obviously something that we look to collect from all of our testers. So thank you to you guys and to your guild and to all the testers who are participating. I enjoyed chatting with you guys.
With that, DA, you want to do a guild plug?
I am DA, leader of Enveus. You can catch us out in the Enveus server at discord.gg/Enveus. We are excited for Alpha 2. We've got a bunch of people ready, and I mean, with this testing, for those of you guys who aren't in yet, the game is very fun. There's a lot to test. It is an alpha, but it is very much enjoyable. The world looks amazing. The characters and gear look great. The combat feels, for those of you, it feels like a more modern version of kind of, I would say, Arcade a little bit, arguably, with a lot more of just that kind of and new nuances from other games. So we're excited for Ashes. I know all these guys in this call, especially Steven, it's his game, is excited for Ashes. And I cannot wait to get into these, not only the early phases, but the later phases itself. You will, and I promise you guys, those of you who haven't played yet, you will get that first weekend test, and Monday will come and you will sit there like, where is my crack? I am fiending for it. I don't want to go play other games for 4 days. I just want to play more Ashes. So it's going to be a great experience for a lot of you guys.
Yeah, thank everyone for showing up. This has been 200 episodes. We're going to continue going well into well past that mark. We're going to go for as long as I can keep this thing this train running, as long as Ashes Creation is a thing. I look forward to future to potentially having you on again, Steven, and talking with you in the future and stuff like that. I look forward to testing. Thank McStackerson for always being on the show. Thank DA for being a really great friend and guild leader. And thank you, Steven, for showing up today. And thank our community.
Appreciate it. Absolutely. Thank you guys in the audience. Loved it.
All right. And I am going to end off with a fun song related to some inside jokes really going on in the alpha too. I can transfer over.
My crack.
Back to the grind. Back to the crack. Bye. And
well, I logged in just to see the sunrise bright and ashes of creation feeling alright. But lo and behold, what do I see? Skeleton lurking in the shadows, grinning at me. I'm trying to run, but I'm rooted to the spot. It's got me trapped in this stinker-filled plot. And I'm caught up in this ghastly game. Defeat the villain, no, what a shame. The laughter erupts through the voice chat. Skeletor got me, and that's just that. Ridiculous moments in an online dream. Caught up chasing that MMO gleam. I'm thinking about my next move, my tactic so clever. The Skeletor screaming, I'll get you never. I pulled out the sword and ready to strike, only to realize I'm not his type. Friends gather round, laughing away. There ain't no mercy in the MMO fray. And I'm caught up in this ghastly gang, defeat the villain, no, what a shame. The laughter erupts through the voice chat. Skeletor's got me, and that's just that. Ridiculous moments in an online dream. Caught up chasing that MMO clean. But even if he ganks me time after time, this game's got my heart, and I'm feeling fine. Virtual world's got me coming back to the last of fun and that Skeletor attack. And I'm caught up in this ghastly game. Defeat the villain, no, what a shame. The laughter up through the voice chat. Skeletor got me, and that's just that. Ridiculous moments in an online dream. Caught up chasing that MMO queen.